My external hard drive broke the other month.
But whoever broke it was probably happier to break it than I am sad to see it broke. It took the shortest fall from my laptop case to the carpeted floor. How is this worth $1,500 to repair? But hey, this is what physical media is for. Being a physical media snob, this should be my time to shine. Like a more feasible version of when doomsday preppers keep their panic room stocked. I have a decent physical media collection, and live in a humidless enough place to not have to care about stuff like disk rot. But that wasn't my main takeaway from the experience. If anything, having my external break has made me grow more fond of digital media. Downloading what I'm now realizing are my true backup files through iTunes and the Humble Bundle store was a real lifesaver. Not to mention was more reliable than wandering through my mind palace and thinking just what files I had saved to my external in the first place. While the common take of physical media being superior to digital still makes sense to me, like, Netflix isn't gonna break into my house to get rid of my physical copy of Stranger Things Season 1. This incident has made me reconsider the role that digital plays in our greater pop culture economy. What are the obvious and not so obvious benefits of both? And does it really matter? Before you can even properly dig into the topic, I think it's worth stating that the concept of digital versus physical is noticeably different depending on the medium being addressed. Books, music, movies, video games, they all have their own distinct digital experience, with some coming out better than others. MP3s are pretty straightforward in that you pay for the file, and the file is pretty versatile in terms of where you can play it. But then you have everything else. With video games, it makes sense that you're limited to the console you bought it from, but when you have books, movies, and TV shows, they get more complicated. With books, be it novels or comics, I have seen DRM-free options out there, which means you have the freedom to copy, download, or otherwise use it as you please as long as you bought it. But more often than not, these latter media are limited to the service you bought it from. If you bought a Kindle copy of a book, it'll only be readable from the Kindle app. If you bought a movie off of Vudu, it'll only play from the Vudu app, etc., etc. Even with music, things have gotten so significantly more complicated thanks to streaming worming its way into the conversation. Back in the day, you'd go to your online retailer of choice, buy the MP3, and immediately download it. Now you gotta wade through layers upon layers of intentionally shitty UI that pressure you into playing the song off a streaming service instead of buying a copy for yourself. No, I don't want to join your shitty streaming service, I want to own a copy of the Mariah Carey Whitney Houston Prince of Egypt song myself! In Amazon's case, not only do I have to consciously avoid all this streaming propaganda, but I also have to know exactly what I'm looking for because they're not even gonna let you sample these tracks before buying them. I ended up with instrumental versions of Deltron 3030 tracks because they were the first to show up on Amazon search results. Which, like, fair. But in the case of the Kilo Kish track I bought, it had zero indication as to whether it was the clean or explicit version. I didn't even know we still made clean versions of music. And to make matters worse, you can only get a refund if you haven't downloaded the file. How am I supposed to know what the file is unless I downloaded it? And you better keep track of your downloads, because each track is limited to 3 total before they cut you off. Yeah, how dare you even humor the idea of owning your music, you Neanderthal. Now pay for Amazon Music EX Plus Alpha Unlimited Championship Edition. Digital is one of those things that should work well in concept, but we keep messing up on the execution. It already normalized captions being available and timestamps that show the time passed as well as time remaining, so those are some well-appreciated wins. And even in terms of bingeability, it's made that whole process not just easier, but synonymous with the platform. I'm gonna come off like one of those slob humans in WALL-E, but the whole concept of being able to slam through a series or a really long movie without having to swap out discs is such a lifesaver. I'm already in watch TV mode, don't make me do any more steps than I have to. With streaming, you turn your device on and you're immediately in. Oh, okay. So you turn on the TV, switch the input to 4 since Dad was watching cable earlier, then wait for the Roku to load, cross your fingers that it connects to the internet, then scroll down 50 rows to the streaming service it's on. But then you forget the streaming service it's on, so you gotta Google that, but you just want to watch Ghost starring Patrick Swayze, which is the least SEO-friendly title, and streaming is one of those things that really makes me miss the Nintendo eShop. Netflix got me staring at a screen in complete silence like a damn baboon. At least give me a BGM to soften the blow. Compare that to cable, where as flawed as it is, you can at least turn it on and immediately walk away since it'll be playing anything, the second it's on. I'm trying to cook dinner, dude, I just need some ambient noise while I'm chopping potatoes. The amount of steps streaming makes, even to pick up where you left off in a show, is insane. Why is it that regardless of the streaming service, I gotta scroll down at least 3 rows to get to the stuff I was in the middle of watching? With how much streaming f***s up from the get-go, not to mention the potpourri of go-to reasons people inevitably bring up when the topic arises, physical media is starting to look pretty appealing right about now. How did physical media get so unappealing? Having not really bought any physical media in a while, I was flabbergasted to see the sheer gulf in quality between normal and high-end discs now. Sure, you still have quality releases from companies like Criterion and Discotek that focus their releases for the collectors, but your average run-of-the-mill DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K has gotten so bland. I was never really the type to care about overlapping disc for cases, but when you have an almost 200 episode series spread out over 23 discs, at least take the care to give it some breathing room for the packaging. This thing looks like when mom puts the foil over the Christmas ham because it's easier than trying to make it fit into Tupperware. Not to mention you also have to figure out which episode is on which disc. Remember when DVDs actually came with a slip of paper telling you what episodes and features are on which disc? Yeah, those days are donezo. Sure, if you're watching a serialized show, then you just watch the discs in order, but what if I'm watching something more loosey-goosey? What if I just feel like watching the 30 Rock episode where they keep making Jenna say rural juror?
The Rural Juror has a limited release next week.
Oh, congratulations. I didn't know they had a release date for for that movie.
Sure, you could just look it up online, but by that point I'll probably just find a clip and watch that instead. Streaming's ruined episodic TV in this regard, where more often than not, the viewer's interested in a particular gag or scene rather than the whole episode itself. And chances are pretty good that you can find someone clip that scene and toss it onto YouTube at this point. Sometimes it's even from an official source. And if I'm watching something with an overarching story, then I'm just gonna default to watching that series digitally, for the aforementioned bingeability of it all. So both mediums have their faults, and people that swear by either one of them should get a swift pie to the face, and I'm such a good YouTuber for providing such a non-committal answer to a question I framed to have a concrete solution, right?
Wrong!
I will say, while digital has its faults, it's also given me this weird new sense for how I view media now. Any type of subscription service frames its movies and shows and music and games as this endless supply of media that you yourself are king of. When I started my monthly $2 Viz subscription for manga, I felt like the goddamn Kaiser. You're telling me I can read all of Dragon Ball, not to mention Toriyama's other licensed titles, for just $2 dues? I mean, kinda. Viz actually has a limit on how many chapters you can read, with the cap being at 100 chapters per day. It's a silly rule you probably wouldn't run into unless you're a kid with too much time on their hands, but limits like these do rewire my brain to make a mental tier list of sorts when approaching my media queue. Like, do I really like this media enough to want to put a ring on it and own it physically, or am I willing to put up with the limitations of streaming just to avoid the shame of owning Disturbia on DVD? I end up doing this a lot with music especially, since I think of the streaming media out there, I treat music as the most disposable backgroundy thing of the bunch. Sorry to any musician homies out there, it just kinda turned out that way for me. Maybe Patreon me enough cash and I can afford to be a vinyl snob, since apparently Target still sells those but not movies. Stuff like ad breaks or the ability to skip tracks just don't come off as a make or break deal anymore. One, since streaming's reached a point that even baseline subscriptions still include ads, and two, I'm listening to my 80s Guilty Pleasures playlist on my commute, dude. I'm not gonna care if I get hit with a commercial every couple songs. That is literally just the radio. And in the case that I did buy something to circumvent streaming, but the something in question is an MP3 or some other digital file, there's the added bonus that I can customize that shit to hell and back if I want. Tired of the talk break at the end of Lauryn Hill's doo-wop? Just trim out that part in Audacity. Want to show my sister the majesty of Yui Aragaki and mixed doubles, but want to avoid an awkward conversation around the Japanese fashion trend known as Gongoro? I literally dropped the file into Windows Movie Maker and took out the scene. More often, I'm seeing fans do their own remasters, color corrections, or various other optimizations of pre-existing media, since the licensors can't be bothered to do it themselves, and a big part of that's thanks to having a digital file to better work with. Same concept goes for video games. I know there's major hullabaloos with digital shops delisting games or patches taking away exploits from earlier versions, but fans having the ability to archive games themselves has really helped sway the conversation to something more positive. Or in the case of my normie ass, I just want to play with mods. Maybe I want save states or just want to be a Ninja Turtle in the Spider-Man game, I don't know. God's not my master. I bought this so I don't have to answer to anyone. But I think the most obvious thing that puts digital above physical is, well, sometimes physical stuff is big. Like, too big. There's this recent trend as of late with comics and manga releasing these big ol' chunky boy releases for their comics. While they look nice and make for fun coffee table displays, they also make for incredibly hard things to actually read. Like, good job, you made the one thing the book was made for actually difficult, are you happy? With how premium the cover and pages for some of these are, I really gotta lock myself in if I want to read any of these. When the purpose of reading these is to just chill out and enjoy the story itself. How am I supposed to do that when there's just digging into my thighs every time I crack it open? I feel like I'm doing research in an old-timey movie, having to consciously go to my desk just to read some of these. And I haven't even mentioned their price point. Most of the time, the price difference between physical and digital is kinda whatever, but in the case of these more premium physical releases, the price difference is just insane. How is the Ashita no Joe volume $50 cheaper in digital? I kinda feel like physical releases for movies and TV shows are overcompensating for physical becoming a dying platform. We've had stuff like the giant head cases for a while already, but it really does feel like we've pendulum back to the early 2000s with how excessive some of these sets can be. You see these more with video games lately, but physical media as a whole are starting to have this stink of desperation to them, where they'll just include anything to make you feel like your purchase was more justified when like, just prioritize the disc to be good quality. I don't care about exclusive statues or booklet packaging where I gotta cut my nails to make sure I don't scratch a disc as I take it out. As long as the movie's the way it's supposed to look, I'm fine. Okay, so this is more of a tangent, but with 4K becoming the new Blu-rays, how have the movies become worse? This asshole again. For the record, I don't mind AI upscaling if it's done mindfully. Like, Discotek's Digimon remasters are honestly god tier, and I have zero complaints about them. But when it's obvious you just turn the remastering setting to auto and walked away without double checking anything, then yeah, no shit, you're gonna have a lesser product. I feel like I hear this with almost every new 4K release now, to the point that I question why we even have this format to begin with. Again, these remasters are supposed to be a chance to release a visually superior version of a beloved film, and yeah, we're getting met with this, or these. And it's like, honestly, I'm better off with the dollar store DVD at this point. At least those had fun menus. Actually, there's a lot to be said about early era DVD menus. You got stuff like the Shrek and Schoolhouse Rock DVDs, both of which had menus with new animations, the latter being a good 30 years after the original series run. Stuff like hidden extras or even DVD-ROM capabilities really added some longevity to your purchase. Compare that to a modern DVD where it is the most static cookie-cutter menu and options. WB didn't even pretend to hide that they're using a template. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm sure if we kept the presentation of older DVDs, I'd be complaining about looping background music and animations, but compare that to the soullessness of modern disc menus, and it's no contest which one I'm gonna prefer. The one that clearly lists how many discs and special features I'm gonna get. Yeah, I don't know if this is to combat people bootlegging their own covers, but it's really weird that Amazon and other retailers just aren't showing the back or side view of their media packaging anymore. Like, is it really a crime to want to know the exact bonus features I'm gonna get with my movie? And when I do get a chance to see the back packaging, it's always the least informative descriptions of the movie possible. Why tease me with the "and more" tag when most of the time there are these nothing special features of the cast giving these default press junket pull quotes? Why am I resorting to these crusty eBay pictures just to see what the back of the casing looks like? It's like companies have gotten so embarrassed of how their movies are presented even though they're the ones in charge of how they look. But hey, this is all cosmetic stuff. Is it that big a deal whether or not I watch a movie physically or digitally? It's not like the world's gonna end if we prefer one over the other. Yeah, maybe your 6th grade social studies teacher wasn't so full of shit after all. Back in the day, the clear delineation between physical and digital meant there was a priority for facts being in physical print than digital. It was easier to take information at face value when reading something like a newspaper because it wasn't being constantly edited by some Yahoo to say that Mariah Carey died of embarrassment after her 2016 New Year's performance. With digital media becoming the default way most people interact with news, it's become more and more difficult to parse through what's reliable and what's an insane opinion just posted by some guy. This is to say that turning our back from physical media was the tiny domino that led to the daily misinformation hell we live in today. You've always had crooks and weirdos spreading misinformation even before the internet, but like, it would usually be in the form of a pamphlet they'd hand out on the street. And even then, the ones that were somehow able to get a more formally published thing out there were still slave to where retailers would place them in stores. Really hard to take your JFK conspiracy theory seriously when it's shelved next to the Garfield books. Now we live in an age where the point of the internet is to share things so thoroughly that we don't even bother checking the source they came from in the first place. Your grandma's getting AI images of faked moon landings and God knows what else, and we just gotta shake our heads disapprovingly because regulations on this slop are nowhere near what they should be. On the small scale, you do get a good chuckle out of the president singing Chinese duets together, but on the other extreme, you get bigoted piles of human garbage claiming that the Holocaust did— oh my god. If historical events from barely 90 years ago are being contested, how will our current history be accurately cataloged? Our over-reliance on digital media and under-reliance on quality checking has led to a glorified minefield of inaccuracies people are either too quick to accept or too apathetic to correct. All because you just had to have Breath of the Wild digitally day one instead of camping outside GameStop like a normal human. I love physical media. For all the obvious reasons. You own it indefinitely, you can lend it to friends, it just feels good to flip over and read the back of the case while the movie starts up. But it's clear that in terms of its day in the sun, physical media is pretty cooked. While streaming and digital do have their conveniences, there's just a certain something about physical media that can never be replicated. Whether it be the ritual of reaching for your shelf and popping a disc into the tray, or the weird compromise of successively burning CDs and downloading the special edition cover art even though you have the standard release, there come certain habits with physical media that are sorely missed. Tiny repeatable actions you become strangely nostalgic for only once they're taken away. Back in the day, even if you weren't super big on media, every household still had that one corner of their living room dedicated to a media library of some sort. Whether it be dad's box of cassettes, or the family shelf underneath the TV, or that binder full of burned discs. It wasn't an endless supply of media that warranted a subscription service, but this intentionally limited, curated list of what your family enjoyed, making this patchwork quilt of everyone's preferences. Conversational shorthand for what your family enjoyed enough to want to buy, record, or rewatch. I remember going to a friend's graduation party and seeing that they had a Blu-ray copy of Heroes Season 2 on their shelf beneath their TV. It wasn't the best season, and was arguably the beginning of the end in terms of that show's quality snowballing into an absolute dumpster fire. But it was important enough to them that they actually owned it. Not Season 1, just Season 2, on the highest quality home release format at that time. We lost contact soon after, but I still remember that day. In part because I fixate on pop culture, but also because it's always fun to get a snippet of a household's personalities for these intangibles. And also because no one should own any of that series past Season 1. But, whatever. If anything, digital has always felt more like a lateral move from physical, with enough caveats that make it occasionally dip into not worth it territory for me. It's not quite the innovation it made itself out to be, but it does squeak by on its baseline convenience, which itself is slowly becoming the expectations of all tech to a depressing degree. More and more often, technology is reinventing the wheel, except the wheel ends up being a weird polygon you gotta pay a monthly subscription for, because somebody made the decision that round wheels were somehow cringe and lesser. At this point, the conversation of digital versus physical is less about which is more convenient, and more about what people have grown accustomed to, regardless of whether or not that's actually more or less convenient. You have younger people seeing analog media less as this preference and more as a brand or lifestyle. I go as far as say that digital versus physical is slowly becoming the new pineapple on pizza, or what counts as a hot dog, where the participation is more important than the discourse itself, and I don't want that. I just want to watch my media in whatever form allows me to enjoy it to the fullest ability. When my tablet runs out of battery or needs an update, I'm gonna wish I got the physical version instead. But when I'm outside waiting in line for a thing, I'm gonna be mad I didn't load my Kindle with any of my backlog. It's this weird balancing act of ensuring availability to the greatest extent while also acknowledging that nobody will ever be on the same page in terms of media preference. But maybe that's what makes media so fun to begin with. Stuff like techies making Doom run on any device may be done as a joke at this point, but it stems from this need to want your favorites readily available at a moment's notice, and that all boils down to the person. Platforms may change, storefronts may fade, but I'd like to believe that people will always enjoy media in some form or another.